Alright, so we're here this morning. It's 9 o'clock. It's about September 16th. The sun rose about 2 hours ago. And I'm in a cypress swamp at the edge of Lake Monroe, which is near Sanford, Florida. And I'm here in the cypress swamp to show you this plant that grows here in the understory. Interesting plant because, as you see in the swamp, there's not much growing in the understory. This area is seasonally flooded, and sometimes it's under several feet of water, and that is evidenced, as you can see, by the water stains on these trees, which are maybe 6 feet high from the ground. You can see here that this understory, there's not much flourishing, and there's not much flourishing here for two reasons. One, these tall trees are blocking most of the sunlight, and the environment here is dark. It's very hard for plants to get a foothold. But there is one plant that can do quite well in this area, and it's a very nondescript plant that's probably easily overlooked. One or two plants in here that are fairly common when it's flooded or after rains. And then this one called false nettle, or Boehmeria cylindrica. It's also called bog hemp. It's found across the eastern half of the country, from Kansas and Texas north to the Great Lakes, and then east to New England and the Great Lakes, and then south obviously through Florida. It's grows 2 to 3 feet tall. It's a perennial, somewhat branching, and it's in the family Urticaceae, and this family includes stinging nettles. This one, obviously false nettles, it does not sting. The leaves are slightly glabrous or pubescent. That's the term for the hairs that cover the surface of the leaf. This plant grows very well in the shade here of the cypress swamp. And another reason why there's a lack of plants in this understory is because of the flooding that occurs here. Due to the fact that this area is underwater for several months out of the year, not much can survive here. You can see here the leaf margins are coarsely serrated or toothed. There's usually 3 veins on the leaf. Arrangement of the leaves is mostly opposite, but occasionally in some plants it'll go alternate. Leaf shape is ovate to lanceolate. It's oval to lance shaped. The flower spikes are rather nondescript. They're not very showy here. These are remnants of the flowers. This plant is usually dioecious, which means that male and female flowers are on the same plant, but occasionally you'll find individuals that have only male or female flowers. And while this plant is not very showy, it is a host plant for several butterfly larvae, including the comma, red admiral, question mark butterflies. This plant likes rich soils, it does not like to dry out, and it likes shade. And you can see it's flourishing quite well in its native habitat here. It's a very common plant, not rare at all. Not much food value for this plant. I know some people, stinging nettles is considered a medicinal plant. This one really doesn't have any well-known medicinal properties. And when I get back to the nursery, I'll show you one that I'm growing, and I'll show you some of the seeds a little closer in a little brighter light. So you can see the habitat, which is a cypress swamp or a Blackwater River swamp. And you can see how the bog hemp or false nettle is able to grow in a completely inundated environment where it is growing in several inches of water. These plants are deciduous, and they will often drop their leaves at the end of the season. They flower roughly from July through September, and it's mid-September now, so a lot of them are flowered and now setting seeds. And you can see them doing well in here amongst the cypress knees. And really the only plant that can compete with this plant in the shade in the understory here is poison ivy, which also grows quite prolifically. And occasionally you'll see some maple seedlings if there's a little light, American elm seedlings, but there isn't much else going on in this understory here. And if there was a clearing, you might see a button bush or fire bush or some wax myrtle, but not much growing in the understory other than palm trees. And that's usually at the edge of the cypress swamp where the ground gets a little higher. All of these trees are very resilient, can withstand, being under several feet of water for months at a time. This plant is wind pollinated, and the seeds are probably dispersed either in the water or also by the wind. So you can find quite a lot of clumps of this growing around here. It grows here and there. Rarely forming like a dense thicket, but kind of just a little bit here, a little bit there. This morning you can hear some of the wildlife calling. What you're hearing are tufted titmice or titmouse. Swamp cicadas, Carolina wren, common birds here at this time of year. Here you can see this false nettle, and you can see some of the flowering stalks, the old ones and the leaf axils, and normally they're greenish white or yellowish, and here they're kind of black. The flowers are not showy on this species at all. Very subtle, but you can see the red admiral or another butterfly might have been feeding on this leaf, and often I believe the red admiral spends its entire life cycle on this plant, so it's a good plant to look at if you want to find red admiral or comma activity butterflies. You can see like the false nettle, I tend to grow it in standing water when possible. It keeps it from drying out, and a lot of these Blackwater River type plants can withstand their roots in water for extended periods of time. They actually tend to do quite well like that. And here you can see the old flower clusters and some of the remnants of the flowers, and now very fine seeds here you can see. And these are probably distributed by the wind or carried in water. The name Boehmeria cylindrica, the name Boehmeria cylindrica refers to Boehmer, who was a German botanist that this genus was named after. Cylindrica refers to the arrangement of the flowers on these stalks and the leaf axils. Boehmeria cylindrica, false nettle.